The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. This is Jason Konopak. I'm a consultant with SWK. We're going to give this a couple more minutes to see if we can get the rest of the crowd in the meeting. So just bear with us just another minute or two. All right, so it looks like we're starting to level off here. Doesn't look like more people are joining anymore. So let's get started. So again, my name is Jason Konopak. I'm a consultant with SWK. Today we're going to review the Visual Integrator module in Sage 100 and kind of go over some of its capabilities from the basics to some of the a little bit more advanced imports and exports that you can do with Visual Integrator. So a quick overview of the module. Basically, what it's going to be able to do, for those who are not familiar with it, is to take data that is outside of Sage 100 and import it in. And then conversely, it can also take data that is in Sage 100 and export it. So very basic. It's not necessarily a great description by the name Visual Integrator, but essentially it is an import-export tool. You can also use it for not only adding data to Sage 100, but also modifying data that's already in there. So we're going to go over some different aspects of that. What I do want to first do is pop up a poll on the screen, and I just want to get a feel for the audience today and see what everybody's comfort level and experience with Visual Integrator is. So you should be seeing a poll pop up on your screen, and if you could just do a quick answer to that, it'll help me get an idea where we're at. All right, great. Lots of responses right away. Thank you for that. It looks like the large majority of you already do use Visual Integrator and want to learn more. So I guess I can skip with some of the basic instruction and concept of Visual Integrator. But there may be some things that even if you do use it, you're not 100% familiar with, or just skip over a certain function and don't really know what it does. So as I work through some of our examples here, you may see some things you haven't seen before. And so let me get started and do a little bit of demonstration here. You will be able to submit some questions in the chat window, as well as at the end. If we want to speak them out, we'll unmute lines at the end of the demonstration and do some Q&A then as well. All right, so for Visual Integrator, again, a lot of you have experience with this already, so this I may not spend too much time on, but I kind of want to just start with a simple export of a job here. So our first thing that pops up is we got to name our job. What I'm going to work with today is our CI item table. That's where all of your items are stored in, if you have inventory management module active. As a kind of a tip that I recommend, I would always recommend you name your job something related to the table you're working with. You may be tempted to say, if we're exporting item stuff, you might want to just do item list or something like that. we've found that it's easy to find things if you kind of start with that module name. In this instance, for item management or item maintenance, it's actually stored in common information, so CI item. And that's what I'm going to name my first one. And then we're going to pick the table that we're going to export from. I'm going to also do CI item. That's the name of the table. Now, if you know it, if you know the table structure of Sage really well, then you can simply just type that table name in and hit enter, and it'll recognize that. But for most of us, if you don't know exactly the naming convention for that table, you hit the lookup button, and you can find that here. You can start typing and get a shortcut to that. So CI item, and your description column here is helpful to find a little bit more detail. Some of the titles for the table name don't always describe enough, so the description column here can help. So we'll double click that, we'll hit accept. It's going to ask us if this is a new job. I'll bring this over from my other screen. And it is a new job, so we're going to get started here. So again, those of you who are familiar with this, this may look pretty familiar to you. We've already got our table name in here. I would always recommend a description as well, because when other people are trying to select a job in the future, if this one is already set up and you've got a good description, then it's going to save future users or even yourself sometime. I often will forget what exactly I named the job despite our naming convention. So the description kind of helps you. So I'm just going to do this as a test export for VI tips and tricks. And then your file type that you're going to export, you can choose a couple of different things. The most common thing you're going to do is delimited, because that's going to allow you to send your data to a CSV file, which is kind of the agreed upon most common file we're going to be working with as far as Sage import export, as well as other programs and other structures are going to use CSVs. Then you can choose your delimiter. In this case, we're going to do comma delimited, kind of the most common thing and the default for CSVs. You can also do, when you do an ASCII file, you can change that. I don't have it off the top of my head, but for instance, if you have data that you're exporting that has commas in it, then comma delimited won't work. It's going to return some errors. So in that case, you could do an ASCII export, or just a delimited export, sorry, with ASCII delimiters. And I think it's something like 09 will give you quotes. There's some other different codes you can find to delimit differently than just your comma if you need to. But in this case, we don't have any commas in our basic information for our items. So we're going to go ahead and stick with CSV. We're going to then choose our export file. Since this is a new job and since it's never been pointed anywhere, we need to find where we're going to put this. So I'm going to put this on the desktop here, and I'm going to actually create a little folder for this. So that we can just use this for all of our things here. And so what you want to do here, you can't just select the folder and leave. You have to actually name the file as well. So I'm going to name this my CI item export. And always make sure to put your file extension as well, CSV in this case, because if you don't put it, then Visual Integrator is just not going to understand your export. A couple other things you can do. You can put a password on this. So for instance, if you don't want everybody in your company to be able to export your items, in this case, you can put a password lock on there, but we'll skip that for us. We're going to go over the chaining to other jobs a little bit later. So for now, we'll skip that. A couple other things that you may want to check on here. If you look at the options tab here, most of this you're not going to need to worry about too often. One thing you may want to do, for instance, if you're working with the general ledger, if say you're exporting things from general ledger postings or from the accounts, you are going to need to export the account key. So essentially, if you have a GL account that is 1000-000-00, that's not going to be the key that Sage needs to identify it, and your normal export of that table will not show the account key. So in that instance, if you're exporting from general ledger fields, you would want to just check this to get your hidden fields exported. But we don't need it for CI item. So that's all we really need to review on tab 1 here, configuration, but I will go back and show you one thing in a second. The second tab, data, is where you're going to really be doing most of your work. Again, those of you who are familiar with this will probably already know exactly what I'm talking about, but you can use the arrows here to add whatever fields you want to your export. So say I just wanted to add a couple of fields. We just wanted to see the item codes in a list and their description and maybe their type. Then you can just hit the arrow on each one and it'll populate them in the list to the right. This is what is actually going to be exported. And you can just really spam that button and bring everything over if you like. And then the back arrow will bring whatever you have highlighted and everything up above it off. Some of you may not know that you can also just insert all fields right here. And so that way, it's going to bring over everything from CI item and set that as our export. So let's just get that exported and sent to our file. We'll just send everything for now so that we can look it over. So once we have everything set to export, we're going to hit accept. And my little pop-up window jumped over the other screen. We will execute the job. And this will take a second to load up as it's got a lot of data in CI item. And it is on my other screen. Okay. So I brought this over. It's still loading everything up. All right, so it looks like that might have been too much for my system. I was sorry about this. I did check this on another machine, but that wasn't working right at the beginning display-wise. So let's just reload this. Okay. Let's maybe reduce our data set a little bit here. Let's do what we were going to say before, and then let's also grab our product line. I want to work with that. Okay, so now we're ready to do that. On this screen here, you'll see basically this is where you're going to start running your jobs from. So your test export description there, that's another reason why it's always good to do a description, because you're actually going to see that. And this can become very useful if, for instance, you have chained jobs, meaning a future job will trigger based on the last one. So what I like to do in that case is often just write something like step 1 of 5 or whatever it may be. And then you can double check that your export file is correct. It looks like we are correct there. You see a few buttons at the bottom here. What I do always recommend, and what I kind of will recommend as well, especially for imports, is the first time you're running anything with Visual Integrator is to, number 1, test in here, but also test it in a test company. If you're not familiar how to set up a test company, if you don't already have one, just let us know, and we can set up a test company for you to work with. That's pretty crucial. Depending on the import, it can be absolutely vital. You do not want to import something that may be incorrect. So kind of a twofold level of safety there. test your import before you run it, and also when you are running it, after hitting accept, run it into a test company first. So, and while you're working on this, you can always go back to the setup of the job by clicking job maintenance. But let's test this here, and we're going to do, we have two options here. We can test all of our records by checking this box, or we can test a certain number of them. And so we can just say, type in 10 and just test 10 records. And this is what pops up. So we read 10, exported 10, didn't skip any. So that's good. We can view our job log, no red text that would indicate an error. We can double check any of these and see that everything passed for the export. So our test was good. Now we can accept. Do you wish to export? Yes, we do. All right, and then we did 105 total. Remember, we just tested with 10, but we exported all 105, and we are looking good. So in this case, I don't think we need to view the job log. All right, so what I'm going to do is pull up these files, this file that we exported here. And so this guy right here is our file. Now, for those who use Excel, if you have Excel set as the default program for CSVs, I do caution you to not just double click and open your files, your CSVs in Excel, because Excel will reformat it a little bit. For instance, it'll chop off leading zeros on a number string. For instance, like an invoice number or an item number. You don't always want that, and it can mess up your re-imports. So I do recommend, for just quick file review, to open with your Notepad or WordPad. Either one would be fine. If you do need to make edits to the file, then it is fine to open it in Excel. Then I would just recommend making a copy. So you can just run a copy and then open that in Excel. Or I would just open the new one in Excel and save that copy in case you need it. But we can look at our CSV and see what we exported. So we can see we did column 1 is our item number, then our item type, and then our item description. And our product line is on the end. You can see a lot of these are miscellaneous items at the top. Then we've got our product line at the end. In this case, this was furniture and accessories, I believe, in this test company. And we could also open this up in Excel, as you see here, and we get a little bit more detail and a little easier to view. But I'll close that for now. And one thing also to note, when you are importing with Visual Integrator, you do not want to have the file open in Excel. It will fail the import. It does work if you have the CSV open in Notepad. So you can do some review and make some quick changes while having it open in Notepad. Okay, so what I'm going to do is we're going to re-import, or we're going to redo the export, I should say. So let's try that again with a little bit of a caveat. So I can open up my job that existed already. Go to my export here. Now, one thing that's useful with Visual Integrator when you're exporting is you can actually do a pseudo join to other tables. So one thing that you may find for those of you that use items in your business is product line is often useful. But we have product line as the field. We have the name of the product line already in our export, but within the Sage CI item table, you don't get a description. So maybe in your system, the description is really going to be helpful. You can actually go down on this list and expand, in this case, product line, and then we can just add the product line description to our export here. And so that can be pretty useful for you. And then we would be able to export that and see our description of the product line. We'll see that in a second. The one thing I also want to show you is this next tab, number 3, select, where you can actually do a little bit of filter on what you're going to export. So let's say in this case, pick a random field, let's say price code. Let's just say we only want to do a price code of a certain value. So we can actually bring that over here, just like with the data tab with the arrow. I'll double click on that and we'll say any price code where the value, and I checked this ahead of time on this company, this test company, we have a price code standard STD for this company. So now we're going to say we're only going to filter and actually export items whose price code is STD. And we're going to add that to our export so that we can see. And I'm going to go and close this so that we can run this export. All right, so we'll run a quick test. As I said, I always like to test these things. Let's just run 10 of them. All right, so we skipped our first 10. They don't have that STD. So we're going to run a few more. Let's just do the whole batch. It's only 100 or so. Okay, so now you can see that we had our 105 records. We exported 49 of them, and we skipped 56 of them. So let's take a look and see in our job log what exactly that meant. So all of these that said record not selected means that we had that a price code that was not standard. Here, we can see that it was selected for export because of our selection. And then you can see we got our actual full product line description as well. So that is a good, useful way to kind of export exactly what you want to see. And we can run our export and open up our file here. And we can see that we got everything that we needed into our comma delimited fashion in our CSV with our product description, product line description, and in this case, our price code. And you can see only STD price codes came out. So that's just a little bit of a description and a demonstration of what you can do with some exports. So now let's take a look at running an import. So I'm actually going to bring this file back open for reference here and create an import job. So let's do a new item, CI item import. In this case, we'll import the CI item. And that's a new job. Yes, it's a new job. Okay, so again, we want to do a quick description. Whatever you want to have there. And then in this case, when you're running an import, you want to check your file and make sure you're bringing in the right file. So again, we'll just go to our desktop folder for my demo, and we'll grab our CSV file there. And we'll set up our import here real quick. We don't need all these guys. What Sage will do is, if you're creating new items, for instance, it will auto-populate a lot of these fields with their yes or no answers that you may or may not need to have included. Oh, and if you delete everything, it reloads them. So I'm going to go right back up to item code. So we can see from our file, we don't have a header on here, but we can see that our item code is first and our item type is second. The way you set up your job is you've got your columns that you're going to import from here. So 1 and 2 are our columns for code and type. And we can work down our list. The beautiful part about this is when you're adding something to your import, it's automatically going to choose the next column for you. So our next column is going to be our description, and boom, column position number 3, just like it is. Then let's say we're going to import our product line. And product line is in number 4. So let's say we just want to run that import. Very simple. We hit accept. Again, most of you have done this before, so I will speed through this a little bit. So we found our item still, and we're going to test it. We'll just test everything. And everything worked, nothing failed, nothing skipped. We didn't tell it to skip anything, and nothing invalid. Sometimes you'll have invalid fields where if something's invalid, it'll still accept the import, but it'll probably skip that field. Like if you're trying to import a date in the wrong format, if the date is not a crucial field for whatever table you're importing into. So always just double check your formatting if you get invalid fields, and your job log will describe what the problem is. So we could run that import. In this case, it's not going to do anything for us, so I'm not going to accept that and overwrite the same data, but you get the picture with that. One thing I do want to show you for, in a way, for exporting, even though it's not exactly the same thing, would be in order to run your export through Excel. It's not really part of Visual Integrator, but it's something I use a lot, and I think it would be valuable to show you real quick. I'm going to open up Excel. And we'll just do a new workbook. Again, I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. If you have questions about how to run these queries in Excel, just let us know. Pretty much all of our consultants know how to do this, or you can reach me directly. But basically, we're going to do a query from Microsoft Query here. And I'm going to choose SODAMAS90 as our ODBC connection. We're going to log in to Sage. And then here we're able to choose our columns and our tables that we're going to import into Excel, essentially an export from Sage. So just like the export jobs we ran, this is going to be able to do it a little bit differently. As a quick aside, if you're really struggling both with your imports and your exports, whether it's in Visual Integrator or elsewhere, there is a very handy tool within Sage that I'll show you real quick. So if you go to your Information Center, this should kind of be the main screen in this panel for a lot of you. You scroll down, go to Resources, and then go down again to File Layouts and Program Information, and finally File Layouts. So this is going to actually, you can click on each module and then the tables within that module. So in this case, we're looking at common information for this item table. So there it is. And then we can see exactly what is in there. So if I know I want to pull product line for each item, but I'm not exactly sure where it is, you can confirm in here by scrolling down or even searching. You could find that product line is within there. And this is very useful for, say you're doing an import and you're not sure which item type to assign an item. You've got a little breakdown right here for item type. So one is a regular item, charge items, comments, miscellaneous items, etc. So this is pretty useful. I use it almost daily for imports, exports, scripting, all kinds of different things that you may be interacting with the actual tables within Sage. Okay, so let's run back to Excel real quick. We're going to do our export here. I'm going to go to CI item. And we can choose our item code, our item type, our item description, and our product line. So basically, you can either hit the arrow at the table and just select the whole table, or go in, expand it, and hit each one. In this case, I just don't need all that other information. There's so much in CI item. As you saw, I locked up my Sage before. So I'll just do these four. We'll hit next. You can do some filtering on this if you like. What I'm actually going to do in this case is I am going to filter on product line. Remember, we saw that one was W, F, and A. So I'm going to only export our product line WF into A. You can sort. By default, this will sort the way I want, but you can choose to do item code, whatever. And we're going to return this to Excel really quick. It'll log in one more time. And then there I have what I need right there in Excel. So again, this is very useful for checking on data, manipulating data, or even running reports. I could start from here and start running reports in Excel this way. That's something that we do a lot of. So there's my 49 items that are in that product line. So the reason I wanted to do this with Excel is not only to show you how to save a CSV from Excel to make sure you can import that, but also Excel is the best way you're going to be modifying your fields. Say you need to massively change. Say I just want to move all these guys from this product line to another product line. So let me just pull one real quick here in Sage. And let's say we want to move all these guys from WF&A to C&A. They're not cables and accessories, but what the heck. So I can go in here and just do a mass edit. Whereas if you were looking at your CSV in your document here, it's not as easy to go in and change all these. You have to do that line by line. Yes, you could open this in Excel and do the same thing, but I just wanted to show you the query as well to get what we need. So I can just do C and A and drag this all the way down. And now I've got a changed data set that I could import. So I'm going to export this, change file type to a CSV, save as, and I'm going to save that in that folder we've been working with, BI demo, and I'm going to call this CI item product line change. All right, so I save that. Now remember, we have this open in Excel. Even though it's still a CSV, we have it open in Excel. That will fail on an import. I can actually show you that, show you what it does, so that if you do get that error message, you know what you're looking for. So let's go to our CI item import job that we had just run, and we'll modify that one. All right, there we go. And we'll change our file to this product line change one here. And let's just double check. You can check our columns, item code, item type, code description, product line. There we go. That's our 4 columns. So that's exactly what we need here. And then one thing we do need to add here is we need to skip our header row. Now, it wouldn't be the end of the world if we ran an import. It would just say record 1 failed. But sometimes when you are going to run a complicated import job, it's best to just tell Sage to ignore it. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tell it to skip a record. And so that's on tab 4. I do skip record, add this in as an active skip. And you see some functions here. This is going to be a little clearer when you open this up. So field 1 is basically column 1. And it's going to say, we're going to look at what parts of column 1. In this case, it's going to be, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's an 8-character field in this case for item code. So if 1 through 8 equal item code, which is our header there, then we're going to skip it. Now you can change this if you just wanted to say that if field 4, meaning product line, equaled product line, you could change that. But it almost always is just simple enough to use your first column and first row. So I have my skip up now, and then I can go over to here, and I can set my product line to change to C and A. So we'll look at that. All right, we'll run our test. Again, all records, since it's only 39. And then look, there's our error, unable to open. There's your path to the file on your computer, unable to open our file. That's because it's open in Excel. So let's close this, especially now that we've done our setup of the job. We don't need that. And now we'll test. And we are complete. We had 49 rows, 48 were imported, 1 was skipped. That's our header row. You can see right there. And then all of our other items came in properly. You can see we changed our product line. So it passed and changed to that C&A that we modified. So that's how you could, that's an example, even though that's CI item, this works for customer maintenance, for GL account setup, for vendor maintenance, anything where you want to just modify fields, especially en masse. That can really help, especially if you just query it in Excel, make your changes, and then save your CSV and import from that. It can save you a lot of time of manual entry. One other thing that I want to show you on this import is the ability to do a run assign. As we wait for this to pop up. So let's say that instead of, we do have this open twice. Let's see which one we need here. All right. So let's say that we didn't want to bother going into Excel and we just wanted to change that. We actually didn't even need to export the product line. So this can also be a huge time saver if you just want to modify every single thing that you're importing. You can do a run assign. And this has a lot of different uses. Say if you wanted to just assign the date across the board for every deposit you were setting up, or a payroll entry, you just assign today's date or whatever date you want to put in. A run assign, basically, you're going to see is going to allow you at the time you run the job to manually enter information. So I'm going to do enter product line. You always use this prompt here so that your user can actually see what's going on here. So we'll do our run assign. And I should back up that there's these 7 different options for how you're going to bring a field into your system. We've looked at replace. That's where we are actually pulling it from the file, the CSV. Assign is just a manual change. So again, we could do that here as well. We could just say everything that we import is going to get CNA as our product line. That would probably be the smartest thing to do in this case, but I wanted to also show you run assign as well. File assign is also useful in certain circumstances. You will reference another table in Sage. And so say you wanted to look at IAM product line and just change this file based on what was already in Sage in the other table. I won't go through all of these, but they all have their uses, and I've used them all from time to time. So let's enter our product line at the time we run the job, and that's what run assign is going to do for us there. Again, we'll accept it, we'll run the job. And now here you see that we have a field that we need to enter before we run the job. So there we can do RC and A and test for everything. And again, just like our last result, we're going to see that it assigns CNA to every item from our data set that we imported. So just another useful way to just change everything in an import. Now, it doesn't mean we're changing everything within the entire list of items within Sage. We're just changing the ones that we had in our file right here. So this isn't the exhaustive list of everything. This is just everything that had that particular product line. So always be careful when you're doing an assign or a run assign that you're 100% sure that the data set you're importing from is what you want to change. And that goes back to running things in a test company and testing first, just to make sure. Okay, so I'm going to run a couple of a little bit more elaborate imports here. Looks like we've got about 20 minutes left, so we should be good. I will speed through this a little bit to keep us on track. But I've got a couple of saved files here that I wanted to import from. And actually, yeah, I will just import from them, but what I was going to originally show, but in the interest of time, I won't, was essentially if you're having trouble deciding in an import what you actually need to import, for certain fields, for certain tables, it's best to just go through it within Sage. So in this example, I'm going to import into AP invoice data entry. And for those of you who know, who do AP invoices for your business, you already know this. But essentially, when we're doing an entry, what does Sage require of us, right? that's what we need to find out in order to set up our import. So in this case, we need a vendor. So we choose a vendor. We need an invoice number, so we can just type one in. We need to set the invoice amount, and it'll auto-populate based on the customer what our terms code is, and then based on, once we put in an amount, it'll read that terms code and give us a due date. And then on the lines tab, we just need a GL account and an amount. So that's what we need to import. There's other things, your comments, your discounts, other things, whether you want this to be billed as a separate check later on. Those things you can also use VI to import to, but they're not crucial to get a working import running. So just the basics for this example, that's all we need to do. So let's go in and create our invoice import. And this is going to be, I'm going to look this one up just to make sure, AP invoice header. Now you notice it does not show invoice detail as a possible table to import. Anytime where you have a header and a detail, you're only going to be able to import into the header, but you'll see that Sage gives you the flexibility to do that. All right, so this is a new job, yes. And import into AP invoice data entry. Again, always make your descriptions there. And I'm going to open up these preset files I have here. I'm just going to open this in Notepad and see what we're going to import. All right. So I'm going to grab that file here. apinvoice.csv. And we're going to match our columns again. We're going to do vision number 1, vendor number 2, invoice number 3. Looking good. So Sage preset that nicely for us. Invoice number we have, we're going to do invoice date, invoice due date, and our header comment. Now always keep in mind that for invoices, you have a comment on the header, on the main header page, and you also have invoice level, line level comments. So I'm going to add our comment for the header there. You can see signified by the H, and L dot signifies our details and our line items. All right, so that is the extent of our header information here. Now we're going to do our line level. So we need our account key for our GL. We need our distribution amount. And we need our comment text. So again, that's all we need. And these came in order 1 through 9, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it looks good. We should be able to import that way. And again, we'll do a quick skip record on the first one. So you actually don't even need to do the whole thing. I often do this. So APDIV, as long as we just say length of 5, and those first 5 are the characters in our import, that means we can skip our header row with that information. Okay. We'll run a test here. And we can test all of them because there's just 2. And you see we had 2 rows of data with the header, that'd be 3, but it says it read 5. And why did it say 5? Because it broke it down into the header and the line item level. So let's look at that in the log real quick. So we have the header record for 01 Airway, that's our vendor, and the invoice number was 12346, and so that's our header. And then within that, we have our line level here, which is our distribution amount and our account and our comment. So you could have multiple lines in your invoice. In this case, I just did 1 to keep it simple. So you could have as many line level records as you want, but you're always going to have one header as long as it's the same division, vendor, and invoice number. So that's why we have multiple lines here. So that worked. We can accept that and run these as an import into our test company here. And it's the same thing, so we don't need to view the job log the second time. And we can just pump in here and see in our invoice data entry that everything is in. So there's our first one, did our header comment, got your line comments, and same with the second one. And then that's ready for posting. And you can certainly edit anything you want once it's in there. The import is not final and it's not posting anything. It's just saving you on a mass import. So if you just don't want your AP team entering in 100 AP invoices a day, there's other ways to do that with automation. But in this case, we're just running a Visual Integrator import to get all of them in. So that looks good for our AP invoice import. And so what I want to also show here is another quick tool for your importing where maybe you want to modify what you're importing, or you just don't have all the right data in your data set to import. So you can actually do what's called a temp field. So let's say we don't have anything on record for a comment, for the header comment. We just don't have anything that we want. So let's say instead we want to just make text that we create from our file. So one thing you can do is go to create a temp field. So I'm going to keep my cursor here. I'm going to add a temp field. I'll bump that back up ahead of our comment. So temp 01 is our temp field here. So let's say that we want this to be a string, and then we want it to assign on the header record. And we're going to use that. We're going to say we're going to also pull that from the invoice number. So that's, if you see in our record here, that's number 3. So we're going to use number 3 for temp 1. And let's just say our comment we want to be a calculation. We want that to be temp 1. Now in this case, obviously your comment could just pull directly from invoice, but you can do a lot of different things with this calculation. For instance, you could say comment equals and then temp 1. I'm actually going to do that within here, this little expression builder. So temp 1, and we'll do comment at the end. Why not? Check this, make sure there's no syntax errors, and that looks good. So now instead of the comment from the file, we're going to just take our invoice number with the word comment after it as a little example. All right, and that worked. We'll view our job log, and we can see that we took our invoice number and our comment is now what we just did in our little calculation. There's a lot of things you can do with that calculation. There's an entire library of different functions and codes you can do with that, what they call provide X logic, in order to be able to manipulate your fields as you're importing them. So you're not always restricted to just using what's in your data set. You can work with that data during the import process to manipulate what is actually stuffed into the field in Sage. And then temp just goes away as kind of definition of the field. This doesn't go into Sage anywhere. It's a temp field and it goes bye-bye. Okay, so one last thing I wanted to show you real quick, I know we only have a few minutes, is to very quickly do a import that chains. So this one is going to be AR cash receipts deposit. And I'll just work through this pretty quickly here. I'm going to open this one up. Okay, I'm gonna break my rule and not do my description in the interest of time here. Okay, deposit is what we want to do. We're going to do deposit number, bank code, deposit date, and cash deposit amount. There we go. We're going to do a skip on number 1. Let's just do the first 5 are DEPOS. Fine. Okay, so I'm not going to run this yet because this is actually going to be a chain. So I'm going to say no to execute. It'll close Visual Integrator. We're going to open another one here, create a new job, and we're going to do that with our details. So this can really help if you're a company that receives a lot of checks in. I set up a job for a client of mine pretty recently that automatically takes data from their bank's lockbox file and then sets that up as a cash receipt, and then their AR team just reviews it before posting. Let's see, did we get our new job set up? All right, here we go. AR cash receipt, that's fine. Cash receipts header. Again, there's no detail. We'll just do it all on the header. This is what I'm going to be working off of. Yes, it's a new job. All right, grab our other file here. Detail. All right, deposit number. We need deposit type in there. A little sneak peek here, what you can do to insert something with this button here. So this is useful because it's going to use our next column and position. So we can see our division number does not match our 4th column that we want. So I'm just going to pull all these guys out. And we're going to do check number next. See, it goes right to 3, division number right to 4, customer number to 5, posting amount 6. And then on the line level, we're going to do our invoice number and our amount posted. Pretty simple. Again, we'll do our quick record skip. First 5, DEPOS. Okay, that looks good. Now, we have 2 jobs to run here because we have to create our deposit with the first job, and then we have to create our actual entries with the second job. So what we can do is chain them together. We'll do that really quick. I'm going to go back to our deposit that we just created. And it's coming up. All right, and now I'm going to do chain 2. I'm going to find that cash receipts job that we're going to actually chain to. And then there we go. We've got everything set up. We'll run our quick import. And we'll accept. Again, in the interest of time, I am, let's see, this one did not do, oh, we need a batch number. So cash receipts, you need a batch. I will add that in real quick. Cancel that. And what I was going to also demo, but I'll skip it in the interest of time here, is there we have another version where essentially, if we create these jobs, the reason this works in this chain is because I have the deposit number on both of my CSV files. In practice, you're probably not going to want to go in and put that in your Excel file. You just want to use the next deposit number. Sage doesn't do that for you automatically, even though you have the ability within Visual Integrator to create, to use the next deposit number in your first deposit, in your first VI job to the deposit table, but it won't pick up that same deposit in your detail post, your cash receipts actual posting. Come on. So what we actually have, our programmer, our developer actually went in and programmed with some code here. You use this perform logic and use create code that actually tells Sage to do that. So you open up even more flexibility with your jobs when you can reach out to us and we can help institute some additional programming if a job is just not doing exactly what you need it to do. So for batch, a little hint with batch is you can just do the next batch by replacing a column that's not used in your data set. That seems to be a way that it works best. All right, so we should be good now to get a new batch. And you can see that we passed here. We'll view that super quick. So we created our deposit here. And then that should chain, and then it automatically brings us up. It's a little bit slow on my machine, but your results may vary on your end. It'll automatically bring up our next one. I should have put in a description here, but I'm going a little fast. You can see this is going to be our cash receipts import. And we can then run that import. And then there we go, 6 cash receipts imported. Again, we have our header, and then we have our line record. And then we can go and view them in cash receipts entry. So I have 2 minutes to the hour right here. Sorry that I'm a little bit behind. So I would like to open it up for questions now. If anybody has any questions, but we can go in here real quick and we can see that our deposit was created. And that we have our 2 lines that or 3 lines that we wanted to import. So there we go. All right, so in the interest of time, I just want to thank everybody for joining and for sitting through the demonstration. Hope you learned some things. So does anybody have any questions about what we covered today? You can either submit them in the chat or we can unmute everybody and see if anybody wants to ask. All right, so I have unmuted everyone. If anybody has any questions, either post them in the chat or let me know. All right. All right, so it looks like there may be some questions in the chat window. I'm just trying to pull them up here. Okay. Yes, I see a question. Did my AP example use batches? No, in this case, it did not. You can, just like I did with the previous import with cash receipts, you can just add batch in your import with an empty field, or you can, if you want to definitely use a specific batch, you can assign that in your file that you import. But yeah, if you just want to use the next batch, add that on the end. But my test AP here did not have batch entry set up, as you can see here. So batch was not enabled for me. That's why we didn't see it. Okay. All right, so I'm just trying to view all of my questions here. All right, so as a data source, I can run a query from. How do I get that option? So you should, by default, Leslie, you're talking about Excel query, I'm guessing. That query will automatically be installed when you install the Sage workstation. So you can just find that by going to Get Data, and it depends on the Excel version. Sometimes the menu selections are a little bit different, but essentially you're going to do Data, Get Data, and just do a new workbook here. Data, Get Data from other sources, Microsoft Query. That's the way to get to your list of ODBC connections where the Sage one will be listed. And so you'll see here, I created this one for some testing. This is a direct data source connection to my ABC company. That's something that we can create up, but that will not be the same across your entire business, your entire network. Whereas the SOTA Mass 91 should be there if you have your workstation installed properly. So that is the database you work from. Let us know if that's not working for me, and we can connect and take a look at your system. All right, Susan asks, I use Sage file layout from time to time, but if you don't know where to find a specific table within a module, is there any search functionality for data tables? Fields often are found in multiple places. How do you know which one to choose? So yeah, again, that table is useful. There's no quick shortcut that I've found to just finding all the tables that a field lives in. So it does take a little bit of trial and error to find the right table that you want to work with. You can certainly also reach out to us or post things, or even just search on Sage City to find a little bit more about the tables. But yeah, it does take a little experience just to get the right feel for where things are. But again, I still use that every day. All right, next question from Melanie. You mentioned setting up an invoice import with multiple GL lines. How would that look? Separate row for each GL line, but with same invoice number or in the same row? Yes, so essentially for our purposes here, if we just bring up my demo data here real quick, what you would see if you wanted to do that again, the way I constructed this data set was behind the scenes with a Excel query based on some data that I just punched in. So I actually did a quick join on the invoice header and the invoice detail in order to get these. So if I had done that again and we want another line for this O1 airway, we would basically just see these things repeated, and then we would see whatever our new account is here, whatever the distribution amount and comment. So the way Sage will deal with it is it knows what the header information is, right? For AP invoice, your key is going to be your division number, your vendor, and your invoice. So if it sees that matches something on another line, then it's automatically going to shoot all of this line level stuff under that same header in the import. So it is smart enough to deal with that. There is another function within Visual Integrator where you can actually tell it what's a line level, a record that's for a line level and a record that's for a header level. I'll bring that up real quick and show you that. Okay, so you can do that under your record line here. So essentially you would just need something in your data to let us know it's a header versus a record. So just like we did our skip record, you could choose to look at a certain field, like say you have an H in the first column for your header stuff and an L in the first column for your line level information. Then it'll force it to automatically split that up. But otherwise, if you have the same header information on each row, it's going to know those belong to the same invoice. Okay, let's see. Will we get a recording of this session? Yes, I believe you will. It should be emailed out to you after this is done. And we do also post them on our YouTube channel. Alex has a question. Is there a manual for VI? Not that I know of. There's your Sage Consultants from SWK. There is a help button here. So if you see that, you can get some help documents from within Sage. Some are pretty useful, some are a little bit dry, but I would check out those functions there to kind of get you started. And then if you get stuck, I would say reach out to us, or again, like I said, Sage City or Sage Knowledge Base can help you out as well. Okay, Leslie says she doesn't have that step available. Leslie, you can reach out to us and we can connect and take a look at your system and see what is available. And then Alex asks how to add available fields for the job. Alex, I'm not sure I get what you're asking, but when you look at a job, you should see within the left panel what can be punched in there. So like this one is a very simple table, your cash deposit table. When it's basically just that first step to doing cash receipts, so there's not a lot to it. But then if you looked at our CI item import, again, I crashed my system earlier, there's many different fields. So that's where you can see what's there. This is exactly the same as what you would find if you're looking up your table within the file layouts within Sage. So that's even in the exact same order, that's what's going to be there. So yeah, you can, once you open up a table, you can do a search and just double check and see if something is listed within that table. All right, payroll entry import, it didn't work. Okay, yeah, Alex, your payroll question, that's probably, I think we're probably looking at something that's not going to work adding to an entry import. The only way you're going to be able to import other fields into your employee record on a payroll entry is to create UDFs within your payroll entry in order to stuff those fields in from employee master. So it's not quite as simple as just running an import. But again, let us know if you want some more help with that. Either myself or another consultant, we can reach out and look at that with you. All right, so we are almost 10 minutes past the hour now. Thank you for everybody that stuck around. Sorry if I ran a little long and chunked into the rest of your day. I know some people have already left. Looks like we have finished all of the other questions. So with that said, I will close this up. And again, thank you all for joining.